Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Flix and Joystix. I'm your host Guy, and today we're gonna talk about Solo, a Star Wars story. You know, initially I wasn't all that hyped for the concept of a Han Solo prequel. It was only 6 months ago that we had come off the heels of Star Wars Episode 8, The Quest for More Fuel, and I really didn't like the nihilist attitude that one had taken. It just didn't seem like Star Wars was fun anymore, especially with as many films that come out now from Disney. There were a couple other factors that were working against it as well. The marketing wasn't really all that exciting for it, the trailers came out at the last second, and initially I wasn't really sold on the concept of Alden Ehrenreich. I had seen footage of Anthony and Gruber, who did a pitch-perfect Han Solo impression.
Han Solo, I'm Captain of the Millennium Falcon. Cheerier tells me you're looking for a passage to the Alderaan system. A fast ship? You never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
And he's actually played a young Harrison Ford in other films.
All it needs is a push start. Just lose the brake, I'll give you a push, you pop your clutch, and you'll take off.
I felt that in Gruber was a better casting choice, and I just wasn't seeing a young Han Solo in the trailers. But I felt a little committed to go see this movie. After all, I do like Ron Howard, especially in light of all his work on Arrested Development. I know that he can carry on a pretty detailed story, and he also can carry on really good bits of humor. I don't know if I was hoping for the best. My initial reaction when I was sitting down and the initial A Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far, Far Away came up, I was like, alright, here we go. And I've never felt that genuine lack of enthusiasm for a Star Wars film before. I think I'm just starting to get a little burned out on Star Wars. But I was willing to give it a chance, and honestly, I'm glad that I did. I wouldn't call the story of Solo something that you haven't heard before, especially if you're a Star Wars fan. It did cover all the plot beats, how Han met Chewie, how Han got the Millennium Falcon, how Han met Lando, how Han got his gun, and all these other things. I wasn't expecting them to come up with the origin of how he got his last name, and initially I wasn't feeling that. Honestly, I'm still not feeling it. I felt it was something that just didn't need to be covered. But there were a few surprise twists, and it was kind of interesting to see things, how they were laid out. It was very much like Rogue One in the fact that, oh, this is how they did it. I didn't feel that Solo had a lot to offer, especially in the way of something new. However, I was entertained. I thought it was a lot of fun, and Ehrenreich really grew on me. I hope I'm saying his name right. I apologize if I'm not. The trailers didn't do a good job of really conveying that he would be able to channel at least some elements of a young Harrison Ford. I don't think it was perfect, but there were a couple moments it's like, okay, yeah, I can buy into this. The story elements were a lot of fun. It was more of a bank heist / western, and it didn't go into every single Star Wars trope. It didn't do the Rogue One thing where it's like, oh hey, it's Darth Vader. Oh hey, it's C-3PO and R2-D2. Oh hey, it's those two guys from the Mos Eisley Cantina that I guess this is what they were doing the day before they met Luke and Obi-Wan. So I didn't really feel a lot of the forced cameos in this one. They hinted at Jabba the Hutt, but they didn't say him specifically by name. They just referred to him as some gangster on Tatooine, and I appreciated that. The fact that they didn't go into the entire Han Solo mythos in one movie. They didn't get into, well, how did he get his rivalry with Boba Fett? What was his deal working with Jabba the Hutt? I'm glad they didn't end this film where you're supposed to buy that this is him sitting down at the Mos Eisley Cantina and then it fades into A New Hope and this is just before Luke walks in. It worked for Rogue One, but it just wouldn't have worked here. I felt the cast was really good. Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian was really great. I felt that he channeled what it was like to be Lando / Billy D. Williams without doing a dead-on impersonation. You could believe that this was a younger Lando. Some of the best scenes came from him. Woody Harrelson was good as Tobias Beckett, and they used Thandie Newton as Val, who was also Maeve from Westworld, and I really liked her. I didn't feel that they did as much with her character as they could have. They did a couple things that subverted my expectations, so it didn't feel like a PowerPoint presentation, but at the same time it wasn't the expectation subverted of the sheer nihilism of The Last Jedi. They didn't go into this, well, you want to see all this stuff, no, we're not going to give it to you. And that was one of my biggest disappointments in retrospect about The Last Jedi. They set up all these mysteries and elements and things, and then it's just like, nah, we're not going to do it. None of it matters. Other characters, such as L3, Lando's droid, I felt the character was okay. There were a few amusing moments from the droid, but the character would have benefited with a few less lines. It felt like she was trying too hard, and it just didn't play off as well as it could have. Interestingly enough, they just released a new Lando prequel comic. Well, that's pretty much what Marvel does. Any element of Star Wars you could ever possibly want, or not, Marvel has a related comic to it. But that's one of the other things that I really noticed about Han Solo. This one was definitely for the fans, and I kind of wonder perhaps if maybe that was a little too much for the fans. Not that it's a bad thing for someone like me who has grown up watching and loving Star Wars and poring over the expanded universe that goes well beyond the films and everything else. What I am referring to is the character of Darth Maul, who makes a surprise appearance toward the end of the film. That to me was exciting, but I can imagine general film audiences going, what? Didn't he die in episode 1? He was cut in half, yes. Did he die? No. And a quick rundown on that without going into full nerd cred on that. After The Phantom Menace, Darth Maul did survive and was brought back in both the Clone Wars and Rebels animated series. And they took that one-dimensional character and made him into something really awesome, where he's heading up his own crime syndicates. He was bitter and angry at both Obi-Wan and Palpatine for wounding him and betraying him. There was almost a tragic element to the character that you don't get if you're not watching 10 seasons worth of animated fare or reading comics or side books or anything. So it's a little confusing, but for someone like me who has, I was like, oh my god, that's so cool, because now that really opens up some other elements. They mentioned Dathomir, and Kira, who is played by Emilia Clarke, it now makes me wonder if she's possibly a Night Sister. Again, this is probably a whole other language to the general audience, but if you haven't seen Rebels and the Clone Wars, definitely take a little time to check them out. Both are excellent series. And I think that's something that Disney is trying to do with Star Wars. They're trying to make it into an expanded cinematic universe, much like Marvel is. And I don't know if the original trilogy was set up specifically for that. I felt it was a pretty self-contained story, and then when they brought the prequels, that was another pretty self-contained story. And while the Star Wars story is really all over the place in every form of media you can possibly get your hands on these days, it didn't feel like it was as necessary to delve into that expanded media as it's starting to become now. For someone like me, not a problem. For, again, general audience, you're going to have to do some reading or not. That's up to you. There were elements of Solo, a Star Wars story, that really stood out to me. I really liked the initial meeting and gradual bonding of Han Solo and Chewbacca during the film. I felt that was something that they couldn't afford to mess up, and I felt they handled it very well. We got to learn a little bit more about Chewbacca, which I thought was cool. And meeting Lando, a much younger, still always as confident and suave, I really enjoyed how he handled himself. I don't think at that stage in time he was prepared for someone like Han Solo, and you can see how their frenemies relationship built out. There were some great lines in it. There were a couple times I genuinely laughed, especially when they kind of subverted classic lines and kind of changed them and made them their own, especially when Han and Lando and company go off on the Kessel Run, and the Millennium Falcon, as you've noticed through promotional stuff, doesn't really look like the classic Millennium Falcon we've always known. It explains how the Millennium Falcon looks the way it does now, and Lando was not too happy for that. Would I recommend Solo? Yeah, actually I would. I didn't have high expectations for it. For a standalone story, I liked Solo. There were hints that they were talking about doing a number of sequels to continue out Han Solo's story. Probably those Jabba and Boba Fett elements that obviously would come into play. His dealings with the Empire. And I don't know if that's going to actually happen, because Solo has not performed really well in the box office. Again, I'm not going to make 50 videos about how Star Wars The Last Jedi has wronged me personally. I just felt it was a messy, nihilistic film. There were some parts I liked about it. It just didn't all work for me in retrospect. It took me a long time to come around to that, but it just is what it is. You can't make a billion Star Wars movies a year and expect every single one of them to be knocked out of the park. And I've come to accept that. And hopefully people will come around on Solo. I think it deserves the chance to be seen. As a complete package, it's alright. It's good. I have no problem with recommending Solo to other people, especially if you're a Star Wars fan, especially if you're a Han Solo fan. You're going to have to just get through your head that this is not Harrison Ford. And you start coming around and liking Alden Ehrenreich's performance. I wasn't expecting that myself, but here we are. And now I'm like, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it again at some point in the future. Well, that's Solo, a Star Wars story. My god, that's a lot of alliteration in that title. It does a good job for what it is. I had fun with it. Although, I don't feel they really captured that one crucial core element that makes Han Solo what it is, and there's no other way to clarify that statement other by simply saying, hit it.
I'm so happy the carbon night is gone. I'm moving on. I'm so happy that it's over now. The pain is gone. I'm putting on my shades to cover up my eyes. I'm jumping in my ride. I'm heading out tonight. I'm solo. I'm Han Solo. I'm Han Solo. I'm Han Solo. Solo. I'm picking up my plaster, putting it on my sign. I'm jumping in my Falcon, whoopie at my side. I'm solo. I'm Han Solo. I'm Han Solo. I'm Han Solo. Solo.
See? There are worse things than The Last Jedi. But not much.
I'm Han Solo. Solo.